But moving off that, let's move to the UFC card this weekend. UFC Fight Night 133, Boise, Junior Dos Santos versus Blagoy Ivanov. I'll be honest, I feel like a casual looking at this bout list. I mean, there's the names that I obviously know,
Right.
but there's some that I'm just like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, honestly, like, where's that soundbite? I should have it somewhere. Anyways, digressing. Oh, here it is.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah, like I just even like names that have been hyped. Like I know Alexander Volkanovski has been hyped a lot. I feel like I haven't watched this guy at all.
Yeah, Randy Brown, another guy who has a significant bit of hype around. At least he did.
The Mikey Gall win helped.
Yeah, nobody knows this is going on. I mean, there are some very good fights on this card, and names like Randy Brown and Dennis Bermudez, or it should strike a chord to you if you really care about this sport. But this is a product of the oversaturation. This is another card that has excellent fights, excellent fighters on there, great prospects, but this is flying so far under the radar because we've seen this already. We see this every week.
And plus, why the hell do you have a Dos Santos versus Ivanov headline card in Boise, Idaho?
Because we just have spots to fill now, and whoever's not injured, just throw them in there. It doesn't make any sense for this fight to be in Boise, Idaho. A Russian and a Brazilian fighter headline a card in Idaho because nothing reminds you of Idaho like Brazil and Russia.
Yes.
What? Okay. I mean, all right. At this point, it is what it is. I mean, I'll look at the fight based on the merit. The merit of this main event is really good. I mean, we're talking about Junior Dos Santos, who obviously former heavyweight champion, who's got an exciting style. He's a guy who we've seen ebbs and flows in his career after the Kane losses, and now he's training with American Top Team. You see some growth in him as a fighter. And then you got him against one of the top guys who until Saturday was outside of the UFC.
A guy who, for those that did not know, was shot like multiple times, like almost died. Awesome story to go find and look up.
Yeah, well, he got stabbed under the armpit, and the knife pierced his heart and his lungs, and he spent 10 days in a coma because of this bar fight. And 10 days after waking up, walked out the hospital and was back fighting, I think, within that year.
That's Russia right there. That is Russia right there.
That's a Russian guy right there all the way. This guy screams, "I want to fight in Boise, Idaho." Being Russian like that, I'm telling you, man. This is a good fight, though. This is a very good fight. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I mean, Ivanov has dispatched a lot of good guys in World Series of Fighting or PFL, whichever banner he fought in. He fought under, and Bellator as well. He also probably his most significant when he knocked out Sean Jordan. So that's no easy victory right there. I'm going to say, though, that he's going to have a rude awakening. Junior Dos Santos is not Sean Jordan.
No.
Junior Dos Santos is another level of heavyweight. Even a diminished version of him still beats like 98% of what the heavyweights in the world have to offer.
And I mean, he is a diminished version. Like the Junior Dos Santos that fought even the Stipe Miocic the first time was a faded version of himself, let alone the version we saw last year that lost to Stipe Miocic via first-round knockout. I am concerned about that factor because you never know if just a fighter is that shot. When the chin goes, the chin does sort of go, especially in MMA, it seems. But, like you said, Blagoy Ivanov, from what I've seen, doesn't really have the skill, I would say, especially striking, to match Junior Dos Santos. And Junior Dos Santos has some of the best counter wrestling, I would argue, in heavyweight history. So I think he should be able to keep on the feet. You're going to see a measured boxing approach from Stipe Miocic, sort of like in the Ben Rothwell fight. I think we're going to see sort of that that Junior Dos Santos. If we don't, though, man, I really hope someone in his team just tells him it's time to hang it up, because the amount of damage that he has taken in his career is concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy that he's away from his old camp.
Yes.
Because the camp that let him get savaged by Cain Velasquez for 10 straight rounds and just watch that, It's just not cool, man. Like, I get it. Your corner is going to try to, especially when you got knockout power like JDS. They're just hoping and praying that you get that big bomb off and you turn the tables. But enough's enough. You know, he is definitely not the same guy since those fights. And the first Stipe fight definitely set him back further than that. I mean, the Alistair Overeem fight was my point, where it was just like, wow, he's clearly not himself anymore. But the way he fought Ben Rothwell was a little tinge of hope there. Kind of like Overeem, his move to Jackson Wink, where he stopped being just such a aggressive just kickboxer, and he became more of a counter striker, more of a guy who was going to counter wrestle you and set you up, as opposed to just trying to blitz you to death. If JDS with that approach, I think even a diminished chin can stand what Ivanov has to offer. And I think Ivanov's best chance is to get this fight to the ground. He's a very, very, very decorated grappler. He's one of the few people with wins over Fedor in Sambo. Also,
yes.
And he's I think he was considered for the judo Olympic team, but decided to fight in mixed martial arts instead. So this is a guy who comes to grappling, gets it in, but JDS is not a guy who you're going to take to the ground very easily. Even Kane had trouble getting him to the ground,
and even had trouble like keeping him there. Like, it's one thing to take down Junior Santos, but he has some of the greatest hips in the world in terms of getting out of there and getting out of the guard and just, you know, wall walking up, and he's good usually. He's one of the best counter wrestlers in the game, I would say.
Definitely. I mean, that's a tall task right there, and especially for a UFC debut, to take on Junior Dos Santos. I mean, granted, this isn't the grandest stage the UFC has ever put on in the beloved Boise, Idaho, but this is still a UFC fight. You still got to consider those octagon jitters, and this is not Ivanov's night, if you ask me. Agreed.
Moving on to the co-main, Dennis Bermudez versus Rick Glenn. I actually really like this fight. I think it's going to be fun, a lot of scrambles. But I think Dennis Bermudez is just a little bit too skilled. I think especially his striking. It's a little bit too refined, I would say. Rick Glenn, to me, is one of those just like scrappers in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Like a poor man Sean Strickland with probably better wrestling or more of a wrestling-centered game. But Dennis Bermudez, I would say, is just going to be able to either keep on the feet, outstrike him, or if it goes to the ground, if it goes to scrambles, it is still Dennis Bermudez. He is still one of, I would say, the better grapplers in that division still, and he should be able to beat a guy like Rick Glenn, who, in my opinion, isn't that special.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, Dennis Bermudez was, first of all, talking about Rick Glenn. Rick Glenn is definitely, the consummate tough guy who's just going to go in there and scrap, and what happens is what happens, and he's just going to do whatever he can in the scrappiest version possible. But Dennis Bermudez is like that too, with a lot more skill. So you put two scrappers against one another, one who is supremely skilled. I think we got our answer there. We saw what a bump in competition did for Rick Glenn, after he savaged Gavin Tucker, and what my opinion was the absolute worst beatdown of last year. And that was oh my God, that was hard to watch. Like I almost cried watching that fight. It was ugly. But you saw him go from such a dominant win to a bump up in competition against Mouse Jury, comes out the loser in that one. I'm not very high on Rick Glenn getting past this test. No, and that's not to say that Bermudez is at top form right now himself, but still a diminished version of Dennis Bermudez, I think, still beats Rick Glenn any day of the week.
Well, absolutely agree. I think Rick Glenn is just one of those like top 25 guys that's always going to give top 15 guys good fights, but never really beat them. Moving on,
he's like the gatekeeper for gatekeepers.
Completely agree. I think that's a great way to put it. He's a great guy to test probably like new UFC signees that have some hype, because he should sort of give them a tough fight, and it's sort of a good test to see if your prospects are the real deal. Speaking of prospects, Sage Northcutt also in against Jack O'Toole. I don't know Zach at all, I'll be honest. So I'm picking Sage here because, I mean, they should be matchmaking Sage Northcutt a little bit more methodically now going forward than what they did in the past. So I'm hoping that who's ever the matchmaker for this division, who is it? Is it Mick Maynard?
I think it's Shelby.
It's Shelby?
Because 155 and up is Shelby, I believe.
Yeah, so I think Shelby should, handle this probably properly going forward with a guy like Sage Northcutt. So he should get the win somewhere in the first 2 rounds, I would say.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a finish for Sage Northcutt. I mean, Zach Otto, I actually picked against him in his last fight. He knocked out Mike Pyle. And, Mike Pyle definitely appeared to be the more skilled fighter, but he was just so diminished by that point that, it was his retirement fight, and Zach Otto capitalized. I mean, he's got heavy hands for sure. Mm-hmm. He's got a hard punch, and he can put you down with it. But Sage, I mean, if your best chance is to strike somebody, Sage is not the guy to try to apply that trade on, man. Sage is, for all the ridicule and stuff he gets for how corny his social media is, and the big smile and the Ken doll looks. The guy can throw down, man.
Yeah.
He can kick your head off.
And once he starts going with combinations, he flows very naturally, I would say.
Definitely.
And he's one of those guys that once he starts going, it's very hard to upset that rhythm and that pattern. You almost have to take him down. You have to grapple with him. And if, like you said, Otao is not really the greatest grappler, he really relies on that power. I see him trying to bang with Sage Northcutt, and that's probably not going to work out because Sage can also wrestle pretty well. He may not be the best submission grappler, but Sage has a pretty good duck under double, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. His ground game is very underrated. I can't remember who his opponent was off the top of my head, but I think it was when he fought on UFC 200. Mm-hmm. I think it was 200 he fought on the prelim card. And he was able to get out of some pretty bad spots on the ground. And it was like, man, it was clear growth. It definitely wasn't the same guy who got, choked out with an arm triangle, just some months prior. Like this was clear evolution. And another thing to consider is that when you've got a guy that young, he is going to make strides in a very, very short period of time. So I would assume every time we see Sage Northcutt, win, lose, or draw, we're going to see a better version of him if he's coming in healthy. Like that is the only reason why he should not appear to be as good, if not better, than the previous version of himself up until maybe his next 5 to 10 fights.
And plus, it seems like he's spending more time at high-level gyms instead of hanging out with his dad.
Yeah,
and that always helps. It's similar to it. Maybe another guy that's received a lot of hype, probably undeserved, like a guy like Mike Perry, who is Mike Perry. But him going to Jackson Wink was a smart move. It obviously showed improvement in his game against Paul Felder, a fight that I picked against Mike Perry because I thought Paul Felder was the better striker. But if you spend time in good gyms, and if you're a young guy and you really are dedicated to the sport, you can usually make quick strides in your game. Absolutely agree with that. Speaking of a guy that's, I think, made a lot of strides in his game quickly, Randy Brown against Nico Price, I think one of those underrated matchups that no one is going to talk about, that no one really is queued up on, but I think is a fun fight. Nico Price picking up some big wins against Alan Jaban and Brandon Thatch, even though he lost to Vicente Luque. But I think this fight's good. Randy Brown, a guy that just beat Mickey Gall, a guy that got a lot of hype off of beating a Sage Northcutt, a guy we just talked about. This is going to be a fun little fight where I think another fight similar to Dennis Bermudez, Rick Glenn, the scrambles, who can win out in the grappling exchanges, I think is going to win this fight.
Yeah, I have to agree with that too. And this is my sleeper for fight of the night. Randy Brown, man, something about that guy's just really entertaining to me.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he's got one of the coolest nicknames in MMA, Rude Boy. You got to shout out that, man. That's a cool ass nickname right there. Randy Brown gets it in, and Nico Price similarly gets it in. They're two guys who, combining their styles, should be an interesting mix of chaos. I'm not sure who to pick in this. I wanna give the slight edge to Brown simply because he's such a big welterweight.
But so is Nico Price. Nico Price is a big welterweight too.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'm just, and maybe in comparison to their opponents, I'm not quite seeing. I didn't see it as much with Nico Price. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention.
We have to remember Nico Price also fought like guys like Brandon Thatch. Brandon Thatch is a big guy. I mean, Randy Brown's bigger.
Thatch is huge.
I mean, Randy Brown's a 6'3" welterweight. Like those don't come around often. Nico Price is 6 feet. Like he's still shorter, but you're right. Randy Brown is the bigger guy. He is. I'll give you that.
I think that might make the difference. But either way, I'm gonna be entertained, man. Pass the popcorn, bro.
Definitely agree. I think also whoever sort of gets off first, whoever's the one really pushing their offensive, being the aggressor, I think is going to win. I think neither guy is really great defensively. I think they both rely a lot on their grappling defensively, and I think, again, either guy could win out here in the grappling exchanges. I don't know who has the edge of it right now. I'm picking Randy Brown slightly, similar to you, but I could see Nico Price catching him maybe with a clean shot, maybe grappling him, going for a submission. I could see that potentially. But I think in the decision, which it's probably going to do because both guys are relatively tough, I think Randy Brown just wins it on points. I think he does a little bit more throughout, a little more output, a little more flashiness to his game, a little more power to his game as well. Next fight on the card, Chad Mendes versus Miles Jury. The return of Chad Mendes off of a 2-year suspension for PEDs that no one is talking about.
I mean, his suspension was, I don't know what he did or didn't do, but from what I understand, it was like cream for psoriasis that made him pop hot. And if that's the case, this is another instance of USADA garbage. So
I have heard the flip side to it. I forget who put it out there. I want to say it was John Nash, but don't quote me on that because John Nash has a lot of credibility, so I don't want to make him seem like he's wrong here if he is. But somebody out there in the MMA media said recently about the Chad Mendes fight that like USADA never could verify the cream, so to speak. Like the cream never showed up. I don't know. I mean, again, like you said, USADA has had a ton of blunders as of late. Josh Barnett, Lyoto Machida, to name a couple. It's
JDS,
JDS, who we should be talking about. Another guy that has been dealing with his PD issues in the last year and a half, so to speak. I don't know what do they think about USADA. I'm of the Luke Thomas mindset. Like just give him PDs. I don't care anymore. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to go deep into a rabbit hole on this one. Maybe maybe we could tag this on to the end of the show. I'll just leave it at that. Chad and Miles Jury, man, I'm excited to see what Chad has. He's been away from the sport it's been 2 years, yes. I guess now, right? Yeah. So he did serve out a full 2-year suspension. He didn't quite finish his last run in the UFC on the highest note, getting slept by Frankie Edgar. The night before UFC 200, yes. Was it the tough finale?
Yes, it was. In the first round too, man. That knockout was.
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy how that happened. So I don't know what to think about this. I always have trouble favoring a guy who is coming off of such a long layoff, and that's just a blanket rule. It made me pick Bisping to beat GSP. It made me pick, Dillashaw over Cruz. It made me pick some things that just it panned out for the other side. But I'm gonna have to do it again because I don't know what you look like after 2 years on the bench. Miles Jury is not a guy, despite the resume he has and the bit of hype he had, a couple years back. He clearly did not turn out to be the guy that we thought he would be.
Yes.
So
the run he had with Diego Sanchez and Takanori Gomi, the amount of hype he had based off of that was really insane, actually, at the time, thinking about it. And then he lost to Cerrone.
Sanchez and Takanori Gomi.
And then he lost to Cerrone and Charles Oliveira back-to-back. And then has beat Mike De La Torre and Rick Glenn since then, and sort of had like a fight a year. Like he hasn't been active. He's sort of been off on a walkabout, trying to find himself, I guess.
Yeah.
I really don't know who to pick on this. I don't think either of these guys is reliable to win this fight.
No, I mean, if you are a betting man, just stay far, far away from Vegas on this one. It's not. It doesn't appear to be something that you can really easily predict. I mean, we could go into their styles. We can juxtapose this fighter striker versus the grappling versus the submission, blah, blah, blah. But we just don't know what we're going to see. And I'd rather just be surprised.
I'm picking Chad Mendes. I think he's just a quality of opponent that Miles Jury has never beat yet. because I think Diego Sanchez is talking to Rigomi, even though they are the names they are, it was in the years he fought him. It was faded versions of those two respective men. Chad Mendes, is he faded? I don't know. Did he just fight McGregor and Frank Yeager back-to-back, and those are two of the best fighters of the low weight classes ever? Maybe that's just a factor we have here. I'm hedging my bets here. I'm picking Chad Mendes just because I think he is the better overall MMA fighter. But like you said, this is a toss up. Don't bet on it. Stay away from it.
Yeah.
But it's good to see Chad Mendes back.
I'll pick Mendes also for the same reasons. But yeah, don't put any money on this at all.
No. And the only really path to victory Miles Jury has is to make it a kickboxing game, stay on the feet, and keep away from the hooks of Chad Mendes. And even then, I don't think he can do that. He hasn't really shown insane footwork, an ability to stay out of danger and aggression. He hasn't shown that to me. So
yeah, he's not a guy who's been able to use his reach and his length and everything very effectively. So I don't see why he would suddenly.
He's a Stefan Struve. He's like a Stefan Struve.
Yeah, exactly.
But
a guy who you should not be able to get that close to him, but somehow you manage to be right in his face the entire time.
And also on paper has the striking ability and acumen to be able to do that, but yet never does.
Exactly.
But moving on to the next fight, Kat Zingano versus Marion Renault. Another sleeper fight that really is not getting a lot of attention. Great fight.
Way too low on the card.
Way too low
on the card.
Well, first off,
this should be co-main event.
Well, first off, no offense to Randy Brown, Nico Price, Sage Northcutt, even Dennis Bermudez and Rick Glenn, but how isn't Chad Mendes, Miles Jury, and Zingano the sort of triple header to Junior Santos? Like, that makes no sense to me.
Ridiculous. The placement on this card is ridiculous. It makes no logical sense where they put some of these fighters.
Oh, you know what it is?
What's that?
The Zingano Jury fight are like the double header to the prelims. That's
okay.
That's what it probably looks like, because it's going to be probably a 4-fight main card. Yeah. So you have Randy Brown through Junior Santos on the main card on Fox Sports 1. And guess what? The prelims, also on Fox Sports 1, is going to be headlined by Chad Mendes and Miles Jury. And that's how they package it for some reason. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I mean,
but even then, that's fucking stupid because it's all in the same network.
It doesn't make any sense.
The prelims
whatsoever. Like the whole separation of the same channel, and then you got to set your DVR twice. Why? Why are we doing this to ourselves? I don't get it. Whatever. This is one of those things. We just okay. That's what you do, guy. That's what you do. Yeah, I don't know.
But digressing back to the fight, Zingano versus Renault. I'm picking Zingano. She's obviously the better fighter on paper in almost every category, I would say. She's also the bigger fighter, the stronger fighter, more powerful. Yeah. She just has been sort of inactive, obviously due to her own personal issues. Her husband committed suicide, 2 or 3 years ago now. That really affected her in a negative way, obviously, and that's to be expected. So I think she's sort of taken a very slow route back to the limelight, so to speak. But again, on paper, she should be, even though the more active Marion Renault, who really only path to victory is to keep it striking and stay away from the grappling exchanges, but she's never been able to do that in her entire career. So I'm picking Zingano by decision. She should look pretty dominant in this performance too, I should say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think if Zingano can establish the threat of grappling, she should run her way with the striking exchanges. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Renault she's very, very skilled at what she does. And if she can find a way to not make you look good, she will. We can ask Holly Holm about that one. Like, you might win a fight against her, but you won't necessarily look like the most dominant person in the world while doing it. Mm-hmm. Zingano also has had these really puzzling fight IQ moments where, like the Ronda Rousey fight, where she was probably the only person at 135 at that time, I guess outside of Amanda Nunes, that could match Ronda with athleticism. And instead of trying to play to some of those strengths, she decides to just charge at her like a maniac and finds herself getting caught in this really just Hail Mary submission in the opening moments of that fight. We've seen when she fought Juliana Pena. The one thing you got to do with Juliana Pena, who has some of the worst striking at ranked that high in the division, the one thing you got to do is not let her get a hold of you. And when you're a good enough grappler like Zingano is, with the level of Muay Thai that she has, that shouldn't be the most difficult thing in the world. But Zingano could not avoid it for the entirety of their fight at UFC 200. So don't rely on Kat Zingano to make the best of decisions in the moment. But that being said, I don't see how she loses this one outside of some sort of mental distance from the fight and what's going on in her mind.
Well, you brought up obviously Ronda Rousey, Juliana Pena, 2 losses that are very notable. I would say those 2 fighters are, in theory, I'm going to be very generous to Juliana Pena. They're specialists in a way. Ronda Rousey obviously for her judo and submission skill, and Pena for her wrestling. And Marion Renault is not a specialist in any way. She's very much a scrapper, like a Sean Strickland. I think it's always the best comparison to use for those scrappers. I think Renault is good or decent in almost every category in MMA, but Kat Zingano is probably good or great in some categories in MMA. And that's going to be the slight difference to lead a probably 30-27 easy decision win for her in a fight that I think is good because she's been on a skid here, 3-fight losing streak from being undefeated, going into the Ronda Rousey fight to now 9-3. She sort of needs this win to sort of bounce back into sort of just the mix, so to speak.
Yeah, she needs it bad.
I don't know what fights you want to break down on the rest of the card.
Let me take a look. Darren Elkins fighting. That's of note against Volkanovski.
Who are you picking that one?
I got to go Elkins. After seeing what Elkins did with Mirsad Bektic, and he's always been a guy that gave everybody problems, I guess, except for Chad Mendez. Elkins is now that is the guy we should be talking about as the scrapper. That's the guy that just goes in there and throws down with reckless abandon and somehow or another finds himself winning when he really shouldn't. The only fight he ever besides Mendez, the only one that he really lost bad to was to the tattoo parlor. Because man, that damaged tattoo, and that is ultra trash. Man, you need to get rid of that. Look at the people on TV and laugh. So
look at the people he's lost. He lost to a guy named Ted Worthington, which, by the way, fantastic name. In 2009, so going on a decade ago. Charles Oliveira in 2010, Chad Mendez 2013, Jeremy Stevens 2014, Hakran Diaz 2014, and he hasn't lost since. He
just suddenly turned things around. Like he I don't know what happened, but keep happening, brother.
And he beat Michael Johnson when Michael Johnson tried to move down to 145. He submitted him in the second round. That was a complete shock to me because, in my mind, Michael Johnson beats a guy like Darren Elkins, a very run-of-the-mill fighter that's just scrappy. And he didn't. He got manhandled. Dennis Bermudez, even though it was a split decision, I thought Elkins won kind of cleanly, in my opinion. And then, like I said, the Betchik win, that was a beautiful KO in the last round. He's just been on a run that I think Darren Elkins may not be sort of finding like a Robbie Lawler like renaissance, but I think he shows that he is this guy, that he is a perennial top 10 guy. And if you are not of that ilk, if you're not elite, you're not going to beat him. You're not going to style on him. And I think Volkanovski, I don't know much about him. I've only seen bits and pieces of his career. I don't know if he's that. Maybe because I don't really trust just showcase wins in Eastern Europe, I just don't trust him really. I don't at all. So I think Darren Elkins should be the favorite in this. I'm picking him by decision, though I could definitely see a submission in the second or third round because Elkins is that good.
Yeah, I think he's going to finish him. One thing you don't want to do is put a prospect. But put your new hot prospect against Darren Elkins. That is just not good for business right there. If you want to build this guy into something, Elkins is not somebody he should be facing, this early into a UFC career. I think Elkins does this and, really upsets some matchmaking.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is, Volkanovski's 5th fight in the UFC, and his best win is Mizuto Hirota, who hasn't been relevant, in a decade, I want to say. And that's being probably generous, I want to say.
You're a very kind man for saying that.
I am, because he was like a Bushido guy way back in the day. Now, this is gonna sound very casual to me, and I'm completely accepting that I'm gonna be casual right here. Is the Saeed Nurmagomedov that's fighting Justin Scoggins related to Khabib Nurmagomedov?
I think he's his cousin.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken,
because they train in the same gym, right?
Fights in, like Khabib's dad trains everybody in the mountain somewhere, and they're just breeding killers or something. I don't know.
Yeah. They're fighting bears. That's sparring.
What a dangerous family! Oh my goodness, you don't want smoke with them. The only family that's competing with the nervies on the street are the Diaz. Don't do it. Don't do it. If your last name is not Diaz, you don't want that smoke. Leave that.
And his only loss is Magomed Bilutov, who is pretty credentialed opponent.
Yeah, he's a legit guy. So there's no shame in losing to him. I'm curious as to what this looks like. I mean,
Justin Scoggins, a guy that got a lot of hype at one point in a very new division and met none of it and lost to everyone at the top. Right? I mean,
who actually had the fight taken place, I picked Ian McCall to beat him. I think Ian would have squeaked that one out. Scoggins, for all of his merits, I mean, he's a very athletic guy. He's big for the weight class, and he's a very creative striker, and he can be very entertaining to watch, but it doesn't necessarily result in wins. And you put if Saeed fights anything like his cousin,
1/10. If he has 1/10 of the grappling skill, it's a wrap.
This is a matchup in hell right here. Like this is another moment where a Nurmagomedov is going to be speaking to someone outside of the cage while beating their opponent. Like that's what we're going to see if this runs in the family. Wow, pray.
Yeah, I'm picking Saeed Nurmagomedov just based off a name.
By murder, death, kill. If he's anything like Khabib, wow. And that's no knock on Scoggins, man. I think Scoggins is a very good fighter when he turns it on properly, when he's dialed in and does the right things. But the problem is, and granted, if he fights like Khabib, there are not a lot of things you can do right. There's just not much that you have to do right to survive that encounter. So we're just going to leave that there.
Yeah, and
prove me wrong, Justin. Prove me wrong.
Quickly, shout out to Liz Carmouche versus Jennifer Maya and Jessica Aguilar versus Jody. Escobar. Always been a fan of Liz Carmouche. I was at the fight where she fought Ronda Rousey at the Staples Center. I remember being in that crowd when she had that rear naked choke. I will forever be a fan of Liz Carmouche based off of that. And the fact that the UFC really didn't push her that much at all, being the first LGBT sort of title challenger, and still have not pushed Amanda Nunes at all. Is what it is.
Oh, don't get me started.
Is what it is. but shout out to the women fighting, and especially Jessica Aguilar as well. I mean, she was the Bellator champion at one point, right?
World Series of Fighting. I think
World Series of Fighting. Another fighter that is of note, and again in a stacked division at 115. Always good to pay attention to what that division is brewing and what's happening with it. But that's really all I have for the card. Anthony, do you have anything else for the card?
Not really. I mean, it's in Boise, so there's that. You know what I'm saying? I'll DVR this one. You're
gonna watch. What are you gonna watch? The Manny Pacquiao fight instead?
I'm gonna try to watch it. I'm actually going to be attending a gathering for friends,
like social life,
party,
like an actual social life. Yeah, that's nice.
Exactly. So this is what the UFC has now forced. Like I have to miss fights in order to have a life, and my wife will be highly upset with me if I spend every single Saturday watching fights in my underwear while drinking beer. and angry tweeting everybody. So I have to actually leave the house. I've got to take off my nice Avenger shirt and put on like adult clothes and go out into the world.